But some of them were students, so it's $5.
This is a good point to ask you, what are the costs and benefits of being a one-man operation and running a group blog, where I guess, what's the trade-off here? Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I don't have overheads. That's a great thing. That's a great thing about blogging. And I think that's a result of us starting it initially with a group of people who had a certain set of ideas about how news in Singapore should work. And as we progress, people have asked us, why don't you take advertising, why don't you take money? I think the simple answer would be, I don't think I've got the business sense to keep it solvent, so it's working fine as a volunteer operation. And our overheads are $140 for hosting a year, which we all put a bit of money together for. Editorial meetups and writer meetups, we pay for tea, that's about it. Everybody chips in. So it's pretty, so on the cost side, no cost or barely anything. And the benefit of running a group blog, as I previously mentioned, was division of labor. It's that much easier to get specialist commentators looking at a certain issue. I guess it's evolving the same way a newsroom would, in that you've got different people on different beats. So now we're starting to group people on different teams for different issues.
Alex, why don't you do the group blog? If, for example, I wanted to be, your partner or your reporter, right? Would you let me?
A cat.
You're a cat.
Cats are not herd animals. They're very solitary. I mean, I have dipped my toes in this kind of group blogging thingy, in the sense that I've always accepted guest articles. And this is where I must be considerate, because I don't know if any of you have ever tried to submit a guest article. So before I go and insult somebody. But let's put it this way. About 1 in 3 guest articles that come to me unsolicited. Some are solicited, some are not solicited. But about 1 in 3 of the unsolicited ones give me a bit of a headache. They're either written in very heavy academic language, or they address a very esoteric topic that will have a reader of 2.5, readership of 2.5. And then you find, or they come like, 4,600 words. And then you end up spending time re-editing the bloody thing, going back and forth, or having to admit to the writer, it's so academic I don't even understand it, let alone the reader. I just think that it's just not worth it. So now I really don't go around making that a priority anymore. On advertising, Yarding Brand has a special problem, which maybe Yarding DOC does not have. Number one, if I have this, what's unpaid type advertising, all right, where there's some machine that generates advertising for you, because I have quite a lot of gay and lesbian articles on it, invariably there'll be all these dating advertisements that will come up, and I just don't like that effect on the brand name. Secondly, if you have specific advertising that you go out and canvas and get, you know how much effort it is to maintain that? Last minute at 11 p.m. one night, the advertiser will say, I want to change the ad. And then you have to quickly, change the ad for him, and upload the new ad and all that. It's just a lot of work to earn not much money. So I'm kind of like happy that I'm unmarried, I'm single, I'm unattached, no commitments, no obligations, no nothing, totally independent.
So it's an interesting trade-off that I'm sure would affect many of you if you're deciding to start something new. Okay, now a question about research, the kind of thinking, reading, and researching that you have to do before you write it. I want to ask Alex about quite a quirky article that came out a few years ago, something about toilets. That mixed personal observation, additional research, as well as using your own special expertise, not in toilets, but in design, right? This was the article on unintelligent toilets. Talk us through the process, how you build that up.
It wasn't a planned article, really. I mean, it came out of this tiny little incident in a shopping center, men's toilet. There was a 5-year-old boy who, wanted to wash his hands because obviously kindergarten teacher must have told him you must wash your hands. And he leaned over the wash basin and tried to reach the tap, and he couldn't. He was too short, and it was too glamorous and too gigantic a wash basin. So there, and so he had to depend on the kindness of strangers, one of whom was me. And I had to hold down the press tab for him, and it took quite some force, even for an adult. Sometimes they calibrate it badly. It takes quite a lot of force to just keep down the press tab, and so that he could wash his hands. So after that, I wrote this article and said, look, what's this? I mean, there are little people around us. And they use the toilets too, and sometimes they are taken out not by their fathers but by their mothers, and for some reason the mother feels so bashful to take a 5-year-old into the ladies' toilet, so she sends the 5-year-old into the men's toilet. Maybe he wants to go to the men's toilet because he feels like a grown-up, you see. Children are like that. But he really can't cope because the equipment around him, are made for adults. So the fact is about 1 in 5 of our population, or 1 in 4 of our population are children. And why can't we, build our shopping mall toilets accordingly? So that's what I did. So it's partly a personal anecdote, partly also an anecdote article. Why you do that? Why you have lower urinals but you don't have lower wash basins? And now, now they have lower wash basins, but they're still as gigantic as ever, and you still cannot reach. And when you talk about design, it's not as if I was designing toilets. No, I think that's not the word. It's called drawing, Cherian. It's called drawing, not design. So I wanted to make that article a little bit more, because it's talk about toilets, and it can be very dry. So I decided to draw little pictures, little cartoons to show the little kid trying so hard to reach the tap, just to make it a bit appealing, make it a bit more personal.
So research doesn't need to be, in other words, on grand topics. It can be the things you observe in daily life. But Cheng-Si, you attempted a story about international double taxation agreements, where I understand your research subsequently turned out to be slightly erroneous.
Yeah.
About that.
So my primary beat is political commentary and reporting. I occasionally try to expand the scope of my writing for versatility, and I think it makes me a better writer. Recently, one of the stories I did, which was tangentially political, was on the OECD grey list that Singapore found itself on. There was a blacklist of tax havens. Singapore was in 20-odd countries that were 40-odd countries that were grey listed during the OECD summit. The government's response to that grey list was to say, look, we are going to accede to OECD standards on double taxation agreements. And this to me sounded like a bit of a red herring, because the point of trying to get out of being a tax haven is information sharing. So there's another set of OECD standards on tax information evasion agreements. So I thought it was a bit of I thought something was strange. Why is the government saying we're going to accede to standards on double taxation agreements which have almost nothing to do with information sharing, instead of saying we're going to sign up to information exchange agreements? So spent the whole night doing research on this, going through the material, the substantive treatise on both, and I came to the conclusion that DTA, a double taxation agreement, has very little to do with information sharing, and the government stand that it was acceding to OECD demands on DTAs was a bit of a red herring. when what it should be doing is signing TIEAs, information sharing